Chapter 1. The Quiet Mountain Village. In a corner of the world, where the mountains kissed the sky, there was a village, so small it could almost be missed by the wandering eye. It was a place of simple means, where each dawn greeted with a cool, gentle breeze, and the sun set behind peaks, bidding good night with ease. This was the home of a young boy named Anne, whose story of dreams and determination had just begun, and lived with his grandparents in a humble wooden house. Nestled among the evergreens, his grandparents, kind and wise, had weathered many storms and sunny skies. Grandfather, with his hair as white as the mountain snow, spent his days tending to the garden. His movements slow, but sure. Grandmother, with wrinkles that told tales of laughter and years, was a master of the kitchen, cooking meals that could bring anyone to tears. Every morning, Anne would wait to the sound of the rooster's crow. He'd jump out of bed, wash his face with cold mountain water, and dress in his simple clothes, a shirt, often patched, and a pair of shorts that had seen better days. His most prized possession was his backpack, a gift from his parents, who had left for the city years ago to find work. It was worn but sturdy, holding his books and dreams. The journey to school was a trek through winding paths, where the mist clung to the mountains like a delicate shawl, and curious eyes would dart around, taking in every detail, the way the dewdrops hung on the leaves, the chirping of the birds, and the occasional deer that would peek through the trees. School was a small building with a handful of rooms, but to Anne, it was a treasure trove of knowledge. His teachers often spoke of the wonders of the outside world, of technology and advancements, but Anne was drawn to the lessons about the earth, the crops, and the secrets they held. After school, Anne would hurry home, his mind buzzing with ideas and questions. He'd find his grandfather in the fields, his hands deep in the earth, and would join him, learning how to nurture the plants. They grew vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and greens, enough to sustain them and share with their neighbors. Grandmother would wait for them as the sun began to set, her hands busy preparing dinner, the aroma filling the air. Evenings in the village were quiet, and would sit under the starry sky, his grandfather's stories filling the air, tales of ancestors, of hardships, and of the land that held them all together. The boy's heart yearned for something more, a desire to bring change, to make a difference. He dreamt of a day when his village wouldn't be just a forgotten speck on the map, but a place of prosperity and joy. As the moon rose high, casting a silver glow over the mountains, Anne would retire to his small room, his mind racing with thoughts. He imagined ways to improve the yield of their crops, to bring wealth to his village, to connect it to the world beyond the mountains. His heart was filled with hope, a silent promise to himself and to the village that had raised him. Life in the mountain village was not easy. Resources were scarce, and the isolation from the bustling cities meant that they had to rely on their ingenuity and the land. But it was a life filled with love, with a sense of community that bound everyone together, and knew that this was his foundation, the starting point of a journey that would take him beyond these mountains, to bring back a treasure more valuable than gold, knowledge. Chapter 2. The School and the Fields. As the sun peeked over the mountains, casting golden rays on the village, and woke to a new day, filled with possibilities and dreams, the rooster's crow echoed through the valley, a familiar wake-up call for the villagers. And stretched, rubbed his sleepy eyes, and dressed quickly, eager to start his day. Breakfast was a simple affair: a bowl of rice porridge, a few vegetables from their garden, and a cup of herbal tea that grandmother brewed each morning. She believed in the healing power of herbs and always said, "A good day starts with a good meal," and savored each spoonful, listening to his grandparents' gentle banters, a daily melody of love and care, with his backpack slung over his shoulder, and set off for school. The path was well-trodden, winding through the forest and over streams, a journey he had made countless times, yet each day brought something new to his keen eyes. He noticed the changes in the leaves, the way the morning dew clung to the spider webs, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the sun. The school was a modest building, painted blue with a red tin roof. Standing at the edge of the village, it had 2 classrooms, a small library filled with books donated by various organizations, and a playground where the laughter of children mingled with the chirping of birds. Mrs. Pham, the school teacher, greeted Anne with a warm smile. "Good morning, Anne. Ready for another day of learning?" "Yes, Mrs. Pham," Anne replied enthusiastically. The classroom was a world of wonder for him. The walls were adorned with maps, charts, and children's artwork. Each subject opened a new window to the world. But it was the science lessons that captivated Anne the most. Mrs. Pham taught them about plants, the weather, the stars, and the infinite possibilities of the universe. As the day progressed, Anne absorbed every word, every fact with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. He was particularly fascinated by a lesson on agriculture, how different crops grew, the importance of weather patterns, and how science could help improve farming techniques. His mind buzzed with ideas, thoughts of how he could use this knowledge to help his village. The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, and said goodbye to his friends and teachers, his mind still swirling with the day's lessons. He hurried home, his steps quickening as he neared the fields where he knew his grandfather would be waiting. The fields were a canvas of greens and browns, a patchwork of life and sustenance for the village. Grandfather was bent over a row of young plants, his hands gently guiding them into the soil. "Anne, just in time to help with the planting," he said, looking up with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and joined his grandfather, kneeling in the soft earth. He loved these moments, the feel of the soil in his hands, the smell of the earth, so rich and full of life. They worked in silence, a comfortable, companionable silence, each lost in their thoughts yet together in their task. "Grandfather," and began hesitantly, "I learned something interesting in school today about how science can help improve our farming." Grandfather looked at him, interest piqued. "Oh, and what did you learn, my boy?" And excitedly shared what he had learned about crop rotation, soil nutrients, and how even a small change could increase the yield. Grandfather listened intently, nodding from time to time. "You have a sharp mind, and perhaps one day you will bring great change to our village." As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they finished their work. Grandmother called them in for dinner, a feast of rice, fish from the nearby stream, and vegetables from their garden. The meal was simple, yet each bite was a reminder of the land's generosity. After dinner, Anne sat outside, gazing at the stars. The night sky was a blanket of twinkling lights, each star a distant world, a dream waiting to be discovered. He thought about the future, about what he could do for his village. The possibilities seemed endless. Like the stars above, the village was asleep. The only sounds were the gentle rustling of the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. Anne felt a sense of peace, a deep connection to this land, his home. He made a silent vow to himself to study hard, to learn all he could, and to use that knowledge to help his village thrive.
Chapter 3, Dreams Among Stars. Night had fallen over the mountain village, draping a blanket of tranquility over its wooden houses and winding paths. In the small, cozy house on the hill, Anne sat by the window, gazing out at the vast expanse of the starlit sky. The stars twinkled like a sea of diamonds, each one a distant world, a beacon of hope and wonder. Grandmother sat beside him, knitting a warm scarf for the upcoming winter. The click-clack of her needles was a rhythmic, comforting sound in the quiet night. "You seem deep in thought, Anne," she said softly, her eyes never leaving her work. Anne turned to her, his eyes still reflecting the starlight. "Grandma, do you think it's possible? Can someone like me really make a difference?" His voice was a mix of hope and uncertainty. Grandmother set her knitting aside and took Anne's hand in hers, worn yet warm. And, my dear boy, you have the heart of the mountains within you, steadfast and enduring. You can do whatever you set your mind to. You are destined for great things. And smiled, reassured by her words. He turned his gaze back to the sky, letting his mind wander to the possibilities that lay ahead. He envisioned a future where his village wasn't just a forgotten place, but a thriving community, a testament to the power of knowledge and hard work. The next morning, the village awoke to the sound of the rooster's crow, signaling the start of a new day. And rose early, as was his habit, and helped grandfather with the morning chores. They fed the chickens, tended to the vegetable garden, and milked their old cow, Bessie. The simplicity of these tasks grounded him, reminding him of the importance of caring for the earth that sustained them. After the chores and set off for school, his mind buzzing with ideas from last night's stargazing. He waved to the villagers he passed, each busy with their daily tasks, Mr. Dow tending to his goats, Mrs. Lin hanging laundry to dry, and little Mai chasing after her runaway puppy. School was a flurry of activity, with children arriving from all corners of the village, their laughter and chatter filling the air. And joined his classmates in the small, crowded classroom, ready for another day of learning. Today, they were learning about ecosystems and the delicate balance of nature. Mrs. Pham, with her usual enthusiasm, explained how every living thing played a vital role in the environment. Just like our village, and thought, where everyone has a part to play. He listened intently, absorbing every word, every concept. His mind raced with ideas on how to apply this knowledge to help his village. After school, and returned to the fields, where grandfather was waiting. They worked side by side, planting new seeds and watering the young plants, and shared his newfound knowledge about ecosystems, and grandfather listened, nodding thoughtfully. You have a sharp mind, and, grandfather said, wiping sweat from his brow. You see things others don't. You'll bring great change to our village, I'm sure of it. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the fields, and grandfather made their way back home. Grandmother had prepared a hearty meal of rice and stew, the aroma wafting through the air. They gathered around the small table, sharing stories and laughter, the warmth of family enveloping them. That night, as An lay in bed, he thought about the day's lessons and the work in the fields. He thought about his parents in the city, working hard to provide for him. He missed them, but he also knew that he had a purpose here, in this village, among these mountains. Anne's dreams were filled with visions of a prosperous village, with fields of bountiful crops and happy, healthy people. He dreamt of a place where education and hard work brought about change, where knowledge was the key to a better future. In his dreams, he saw himself, older and wiser, standing in the middle of the village, surrounded by smiling faces. He had returned from the city, not just as the boy from the mountain village, but as the one who brought hope and prosperity to his people. The stars continued to twinkle in the night sky, watching over the village, over and his dreams. They were silent witnesses to the aspirations of a young boy who dared to dream big, who believed in the power of change. In the quiet mountain village, nestled among the towering peaks, a seed of hope was growing. It was nurtured by love, by knowledge, and by the unwavering spirit of a boy who looked at the stars and saw a future filled with possibilities.
Chapter 4, The Journey to Knowledge. As the seasons turned, painting the village in a kaleidoscope of colors, Anne's journey continued. The once young boy, whose dreams reached as high as the mountain peaks, was now on the cusp of manhood. His time in the village school had come to an end, marked by a small but heartfelt ceremony, and stood among his peers, a mix of pride and nostalgia filling his heart. He had excelled in his studies, driven by a passion for learning and a deep desire to make a difference. The village, though brimming with love and community spirit, had its limitations, and knew that to achieve his dreams, he needed to venture beyond the familiar paths of his childhood. The university in the city beckoned, a place where knowledge flowed like a mighty river, where ideas were as numerous as the stars he so loved to gaze upon. Leaving the village was not an easy decision. Anne's heart ached at the thought of leaving his grandparents, who had raised him with such tenderness and care. Grandfather and grandmother understood, though. They knew this day would come, and they prepared him as best they could. "Remember, Anne," grandfather said, his voice steady but his eyes glistening, "no matter how far you go, this village will always be your home." Grandmother, ever the pillar of strength, packed a small suitcase for Anne. It contained not just clothes and necessities, but also dried herbs from her garden, a small photo album filled with memories, and a hand-knitted scarf to keep him warm. "To remind you of us," she said with a smile, though her eyes betrayed a hint of sadness. The day of departure arrived. The entire village seemed to have come to bid Anne farewell. Mr. Dow, Mrs. Lin, Little Mai, and many others gathered around, offering words of encouragement and small tokens for his journey. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with tears and laughter, a testament to the bond Anne shared with his village. The journey to the city was a long one, traveling through winding roads that cut through hills and forests, and watched as the scenery changed, the mountains giving way to rolling hills, and then to the sprawling expanse of the city. It was a world so different from his village: tall buildings, busy streets, and a constant hum of activity. The university was an imposing structure, grand and intimidating, and stepped through its gates with a mix of awe and nervousness. He was a village boy in a city of strangers, but he carried with him the strength and wisdom of his mountains. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and immersed himself in his studies, his mind thirsty for the knowledge that each book, each lecture offered. He studied agriculture, delving deep into subjects like crop science, sustainable farming techniques, and agri-technology. His professors recognized his dedication and passion, and soon, Anne became a familiar face in the university's research labs and libraries. Life in the city was not without its challenges, and missed the fresh air of his village, the simplicity of life among the mountains. The city was a maze of concrete and steel, its pace relentless, but Anne found solace in his studies, in the knowledge that every page he turned brought him closer to his dream. As the years passed, Anne grew in knowledge and in character. He was no longer the wide-eyed boy from the village, but a young man with a vision, and the skills to make it a reality. He completed his studies with honors, his thesis on innovative farming techniques earning him accolades from his professors and peers. The day of his graduation was a moment of triumph and reflection. Anne stood in his gown and cap, a symbol of his hard work and determination. He thought of his village, of his grandparents, and of the journey that brought him here. He knew this was just the beginning, the first step in a long path to bringing change to his beloved village. Anne's heart swelled with gratitude and purpose as he received his degree. He had done it, not just for himself, but for his village, for the generations to come. He was ready to return, to bring back the wealth of knowledge he had gained, to transform the land that had raised him. The journey back to the village was a different one, and was not the same person who had left those years ago. He was returning as a beacon of hope, a bridge between the old and the new, between tradition and innovation. The mountains welcomed him back, their peaks standing tall and proud, just like the dreams of the boy who once looked up at the stars and dared to dream big. In the quiet mountain village, a new chapter was about to begin, a chapter of growth, of prosperity, and of a young man's unwavering commitment to his roots. Anne's journey of knowledge was complete, but his journey of transformation was just beginning. GPT Chapter 5 The Scientist Returns. The morning sun crested over the mountain village, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Its rays touched the wooden houses, the fields, and the winding paths, awakening the village to a new day. But this was no ordinary day. It was the day Anne, the village's son, returned. Anne's journey back was a harmonious blend of excitement and nostalgia. As he neared the village, memories flooded back, the laughter of his childhood, the wisdom of his grandparents, and the dreams he nurtured under the starlit sky. The village, though unchanged in appearance, seemed different to him now. It was no longer just a place he called home. It was the canvas on which he would paint his dreams. His arrival was met with joy and celebration. Grandfather and grandmother, now older and frailer, embraced him with tears of happiness. The villagers gathered, their faces beaming with pride. Anne, once a boy with questions in his eyes, stood before them now as a man, an embodiment of hope and progress. The days that followed were a flurry of activity, and shared his knowledge with the village, speaking of sustainable farming techniques, crop rotation, and soil conservation. His words were not just theories from textbooks but practical solutions to the problems they faced. The villagers listened, their skepticism slowly giving way to interest and hope. And organized workshops and demonstrations, showing the villagers how to implement these new methods. He introduced them to composting, to natural pest control, and to water conservation techniques. He showed them how science and tradition could work hand in hand, how the wisdom of the past could be enhanced with the knowledge of the present. The fields of the village became a testing ground for these new ideas, and worked alongside the villagers, his hands once again in the soil he loved. Together, they planted new varieties of crops, experimented with planting patterns, and tracked the health of the soil. Change did not come overnight. There were challenges and setbacks, times when the crops failed, and the old fears crept back, but Anne remained steadfast, his resolve unshaken. He tweaked his methods, learned from the failures, and encouraged the villagers to keep trying. His passion became their motivation, his dream their collective aspiration. As the seasons changed, the results of their hard work began to show. The fields became greener, the harvests more bountiful. The villagers, who had once looked upon Anne's ideas with doubt, now spoke of him with respect and gratitude. The young man from their village had brought them a gift more precious than gold, the gift of knowledge. Anne's success in the fields was just the beginning. He turned his attention to other aspects of village life. He collaborated with local carpenters and masons to improve irrigation systems and storage facilities. He organized health and education camps for the villagers, bringing in experts from the city. The village slowly transformed, not just in its appearance but in its spirit. The children, who once faced a future limited to the confines of the village, now dreamed of becoming scientists, teachers, and leaders. The adults, who had once resigned themselves to a life of hardship, now worked with a sense of purpose and pride. Grandfather and grandmother watched this transformation with joy. "You have brought life to our village, Anne," grandfather said one evening as they sat outside, looking at the fields glowing under the moonlight. "You have shown us that our dreams are not bound by the mountains that surround us." Anne smiled, his heart full. "I have only shown you what was always here," he replied. "The strength, the wisdom, the spirit of this village. I just helped it grow." As the moon climbed higher in the sky, and thought about his journey, he had left the village as a boy seeking knowledge, and returned as a man bringing change. He had bridged two worlds, the world of his ancestors, and the world of his dreams. The village was no longer a forgotten speck in the mountains. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of education and determination. And at the heart of this transformation was Anne, the boy who once looked at the stars, and saw a future of possibilities. Chapter 6. The transformation begins. As the golden rays of dawn kissed the peaks of the mountains, the village of Anne's childhood stirred to life. It was no longer the sleepy hamlet tucked away in obscurity. It had begun its transformation, a metamorphosis guided by the hands and heart of Anne, the young scientist who had returned home with a vision. The change was palpable, not just in the fields that now flourished with verdant crops, but in the air itself, imbued with a sense of purpose and newfound hope. Anne had become the village's beacon, illuminating a path forward, his knowledge a key unlocking potentials long dormant. Anne's days were a whirlwind of activity. Each morning, he walked through the village, a nod here, a word of advice there, his presence a reassuring constant. The villagers, once skeptical, now looked to him for guidance. His innovations in farming had yielded results beyond expectations. The fields were a tapestry of green, gold, and earthy browns, a testament to the blend of traditional wisdom and modern science. But Anne's vision extended beyond the fields and crops. He saw a village that was self-sustaining, a community that thrived not just on agriculture but on education, health, and mutual support. He organized meetings, gathering the villagers under the old banyan tree, their natural assembly point. Here, ideas were exchanged, plans were made, and the future was shaped. The transformation was not without its challenges. The old ways were deeply ingrained, and change was a tide that ebbed and flowed. But Anne's resolve was steadfast, his belief in his village unshakable. He worked alongside the villagers, his hands as calloused as theirs, his brow as sweat-streaked. He was one of them, their son, their hope. One of Anne's significant initiatives was the introduction of a cooperative system. He encouraged the villagers to pool their resources, to work together for the common good. The cooperative would manage the sale of their produce, ensuring fair prices and eliminating the middlemen, who had long taken advantage of their isolation. This system revolutionized their economy. The villagers, who had once struggled to make ends meet, now found themselves part of a thriving collective. The profits from their sales were invested back into the village, in education, in healthcare, and in further improving their agricultural practices, and also focused on the younger generation. He knew that the future of the village lay in the hands of its children. He organized classes and workshops, bringing in teachers and experts from the city. The children learned about science and technology, about the world beyond their mountains, and about the potential they held within. The education was not limited to the children, and held sessions for adults as well, teaching them about nutrition, healthcare, and the importance of environmental conservation. The village was a hive of learning, a community growing in knowledge and wisdom. The most visible symbol of the village's transformation was the new community center. Built through the collective efforts of the villagers, it stood at the heart of the village, a hub of activity and learning. It housed a library, a health clinic, and a meeting hall. It was here that the villagers gathered to celebrate their festivals, to make decisions, and to welcome visitors from afar. Anne's grandparents watched with pride as the village flourished. Grandfather, who had once worried about the future, now saw a legacy that would endure. Grandmother, her hands still busy with her knitting, smiled at the laughter of the children, the hum of a village reborn. But the transformation was not just in the tangible. It was in the spirit of the villagers, in their newfound confidence and pride. They walked taller, worked harder, and dreamed bigger. The village had become a beacon, a model for other communities in the region. News of the village's success spread, drawing visitors from neighboring villages, from the city, even from distant lands. They came to see the miracle in the mountains, the village that had turned its fate around. And at the center of it all was Anne, the humble scientist, the village's son. Anne's journey had come full circle. He had left as a boy seeking knowledge, and had returned as a man who imparted wisdom. He had dreamed of changing his village, but in doing so, he had also changed himself. He had learned the true meaning of leadership and the power of community. As the sun set behind the mountains, bathing the village in a warm, golden light, and stood at the edge of the fields, looking out over the land he loved, the transformation had begun, but the journey was far from over. There were more dreams to chase, more challenges to overcome.
Chapter 7. The Village Reborn. Years passed, and the village once hidden in the folds of the mountains blossomed under Anne's guidance. The transformation was not just a tale of success but a saga of a community reborn, a testament to the enduring spirit of its people. The village had become a vibrant tapestry of innovation and tradition, where the wisdom of the old interwove with the vigor of the new. The fields, once struggling to yield enough, now flourished, embracing the methods Anne had introduced. The village no longer just survived, it thrived. Anne, the catalyst of this renaissance, watched as his dreams materialized into reality. The once young boy, who gazed at the stars and dreamt of change, now stood as a pillar of his community, his vision a beacon that lit the way forward. The fields were a sight to behold, with rows of crops stretching as far as the eye could see. The villagers had embraced crop rotation, organic farming, and sustainable practices, leading to yields that were the envy of neighboring villages. The cooperative, which Anne had established, had grown in size and scope, now a thriving entity that ensured fair trade and steady income for the villagers. The village market, once a modest affair, had transformed into a bustling center of trade. Farmers from nearby villages came to learn and trade, marveling at the prosperity that had taken root. The market was a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, vendors selling fresh produce, handmade crafts, and the laughter of children playing. Anne's impact extended beyond agriculture. The community center, which had started as a simple meeting place, was now the heart of the village. It housed a library brimming with books, a clinic providing essential health care, and a hall where villagers gathered for celebrations and meetings. Education, which Anne had championed from the start, had taken a front seat in the village's priorities. The local school, once a humble building with limited resources, had expanded, now offering a broader curriculum and attracting teachers from across the region. The children of the village, bright-eyed and eager, received an education that opened doors to a world of possibilities. The transformation of the village had a ripple effect, extending its influence beyond its borders. It became a model of rural development, drawing visitors from far and wide. Government officials, govs, and academics came to study the village's success, to learn how a small community had turned its fortunes around. Anne's grandparents, now venerable elders, watched with pride and amazement. They had witnessed the village's darkest days, and now basked in its brightest. "You have brought life to this land," Anne, grandfather would often say, his voice thick with emotion. "You have sown the seeds of hope and reaped a harvest of prosperity." But the transformation was not without its challenges. With growth came new problems, managing resources, ensuring sustainable development, and maintaining the delicate balance between progress and preservation. And tackled these challenges head-on, his belief in his community unwavering. He organized forums and workshops, inviting experts to share their knowledge on sustainable development, environmental conservation, and community management. The villagers, once hesitant to embrace change, now participated actively, their voices and opinions shaping the course of their collective future. The village's success story was not just about economic prosperity, it was about the empowerment of its people. Women, who had once remained in the background, now took on leadership roles, their contributions invaluable to the village's progress. The youth, inspired by Anne's journey, pursued education and opportunities, knowing they had a role to play in their community's future. As the years rolled on, the village maintained its harmony with nature. The mountains that cradled the village stood as silent sentinels, witnesses to the remarkable transformation. The streams that meandered through the fields continued to flow, their waters a symbol of life and renewal. Anne, who had once set out to change the world, realized that the world he sought to change was right here, in his village. His journey had taught him that change begins at home, in the hearts of people, and in the will to make a difference. The Village Reborn was a beacon of hope, a story of resilience and determination. It stood as a testament to what can be achieved when a community comes together, guided by a vision, fueled by knowledge, and bound by a shared destiny.
Chapter 8: The Pathway to the Future. The years rolled by, and the mountain village, once isolated and struggling, had blossomed into a vibrant community, a jewel nestled in the embrace of the towering peaks. The transformation was complete, and at the heart of it all stood Anne, the visionary who had ignited the flame of change. The village had become a symbol of hope and progress, not just for its inhabitants, but for the surrounding regions as well. It was a living testament to the power of education, hard work, and community spirit. But for Anne, the journey was far from over. He knew that to sustain this growth, the village needed to connect with the world beyond the mountains. The dream of building a road, a pathway that would link the village to the outside world, had long been in Anne's mind. It was a dream shared by the villagers, who saw it as a bridge to new opportunities, to a future where their produce, their crafts, and their children could find new horizons. The task was monumental. The mountains, though majestic, were formidable barriers, but the spirit of the village was indomitable. Anne, with his characteristic determination, set about making this dream a reality. He reached out to government officials, to anyone who would listen and could help. His efforts, fueled by the success story of the village, drew attention and support. The project began, a collaboration of minds, hands, and hearts. Engineers and workers from the city joined the villagers, their skills and strengths uniting in a common goal. The construction was arduous, with each day presenting new challenges, but the resolve of the community was unyielding, their vision clear. As the road took shape, winding its way through the mountains, a sense of excitement and anticipation filled the air. The villagers watched as the once impassable terrain transformed, as the pathway to their future unfolded before their eyes. The day the road was completed was a day of jubilation. A ribbon-cutting ceremony was held, attended by officials, dignitaries, and media from the city. The village, once hidden, was now in the spotlight, its story an inspiration to all. The road brought with it a tide of change. Trucks and cars began to traverse the path, bringing in supplies and taking the village's produce to markets far and wide. The villagers marveled at the ease with which they could now connect to the world outside their mountains. With the road came other developments. A bus service was introduced, providing the villagers with easy access to the city. The children, who now aspired to careers beyond farming, found it easier to pursue higher education. The village's products, once confined to local markets, found their way onto shelves in the city, their quality and uniqueness drawing customers and acclaim. And watched this unfold, a mix of pride and humility in his heart. He had started a revolution, not of conflict, but of growth and opportunity. The village had become a beacon, guiding others on the path of development and sustainability. But with progress came new challenges. The influx of visitors and traders brought about a need for vigilance. Anne and the village elders implemented policies to ensure that the village's values and environment were preserved, that the growth was sustainable and beneficial to all. The village's success story also attracted the youth from neighboring areas. They came seeking knowledge, eager to learn from the village that had transformed its fate, and organized training programs, sharing the techniques and practices that had made the village a model of rural development. As the years passed, the village continued to grow, but its essence remained unchanged. It was still a community bound by shared values, by a love for their land, and a respect for each other. The road had opened the world to them, but their hearts remained rooted in the soil of their village. Anne, now a respected figure not just in his village but beyond, looked to the future with hope. He had achieved what he had set out to do, but his journey was not yet complete. He dreamed of replicating the village's success, of spreading the message of sustainable development and community empowerment. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the village, and stood by the new road, looking out at the horizon. The road was a symbol, a link between the past and the future, between tradition and progress. It was a path that led to new possibilities, to a future where the village and its people could continue to grow, to learn, and to thrive.